Hi, how are you? I hope you're all doing well. So, I've just got back from my holidays. I've just been and spent a week in Spain, which was lovely, and been unpacking the case, doing the washing, and I've decided to give my craft room just a little bit of a clear out, bit of a clean before I started getting back into it. And I came across loads of scrapbooking paper and cardstock, which I have had for years. And the reason I've still got it is because I'm not quite sure how to use it. I've either don't like the style anymore, or perhaps I may have bought it for a particular project I was doing and it was left over. And I was thinking, what could I do to make sure that I utilise what I have at home in my stash rather than keep, either buying stuff or making stuff. So I had a lot of 12 by 12 papers like this, which was just a sheet full of pictures of tickets, which I've obviously just kind of had sitting there. I must have never really known what to do with it. And I thought, done it, just cut them up and make ticket labels. So that's what I've been doing. So I've got lots of labels there to go at. And I was thinking, what else have I got that I could utilise? Can I kind of build up my stash of supplies and get some things ready just from what I already have? Then I found this similar one. Again, this is a 12 by 12 and it's just got loads of adverts on. So I've been cutting these up to give myself a big stash of ephemera. I mean, that one's great. I could imagine that in a sewing journal or something like that, when perhaps I wouldn't use the full page like this. So that's another one that I've been doing. I also have a similar one to the tickets but in red, and I really like that red colour, so I shall be cutting some of those up. Then, now I think this is Maggie Holmes, I think, and it's just lots of gorgeous ephemera pieces. We've got postcards, receipts, catalogue cards, and again I'm going to cut them up because I'm more likely to use them like that than I am as a piece of paper. Again, photographer's notes. I love that one here with the camera. So yeah, I'm going to get on it and do that and cut those up, and that will give me some really nice ephemera pieces there. And I also thought, well, what about smaller elements? And I found this piece of paper. Again, it's probably sitting there because I've not really known what to do with it. But if I cut up all the individual numbers, I've got some really good kind of, not really ephemera, I suppose, collage fodder, and bits and pieces that I could use to create either mixed media or something like that. So I'm going to also cut those up as well. So I have my labels. I've started cutting out some of the red ones. I will continue with those later. I have some gorgeous ephemera bits and pieces. Let's have a look what I've got in here. Like library cards and things like that, which are just brilliant to have all blank, all ready to go. Some more ephemera here, cards and photos and bits of maps, an introduction to dark room photo processing, loads of things there, all of these different adverts and these gorgeous numbers. I mean, to be honest, half of you might be sat there thinking, you know, those pages are intended for this anyway. They're supposed to be cut up. However, I tend to put my papers into my storage, and like I said, I forget about them. And unless I do something proactive like this and cut them up and put them somewhere I can see, I'm likely not to use them. So although it seems quite obvious that, you know, cutting these up, of course they're going to be cut up, to me it's just worth reminding myself. So now I've got a lovely collection of things that I can use. And I was also thinking that papers that I wouldn't necessarily use as a whole piece, perhaps there are elements on the papers that I could do some fussy cutting with and use the paper that way. So I'm going to go and have a look. So this piece of paper, for example, as a whole, I'm not likely to use it. It's got quite a bit of a teenage feel to it. It's not something that I'm really going to use as a 12 by 12. However, if you look closely, it's got some really cool icons, hands, worlds, you know, these speech bubbles, the suitcase, the bikes, all, you know, all these different aspects, even like this pencil, a camera, individually, you know, are all going to be great for adding to projects. So I've got some great fussy cutting there. I have found this paper, which is bright hearts on one side, bright flowers on the other. Not really me. I don't tend to really use hearts a lot. I might use some of like the greeny bluey colours, but not really. I do find hearts quite difficult to work with for some reason. And again, these flowers, a bit on the bright side for me, but if I was to cut out maybe this bunch of flowers here, ink it, darken the colour a little bit, you know, it might be something that I'm more able to use, or more, you know, I feel like I'm more able to use it. So I'm going to try that. And then I found rulers. Who doesn't love rulers? I'm going to make some rulers just by slicing this piece of paper. And I also found this piece here. And it's just got the months of the year on. So I'm going to cut myself some strips and make myself some little month labels. So again, just going through my stash, how much stuff have I got here to play with, which was just sitting there. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do some fussy cutting. I am going to do some rulers, and I'm going to make some month of the year little labels. And then depending on time, I will see you in a bit, or I will see you tomorrow once I've done this cutting out. See you soon. So it's actually been about a week and a half. I have cut all my bits and put them into here. So I've got my rulers and my numbers and all the ephemera bits. And I've been playing with the flowers that I cut out. If you remember, I had a piece of 12 by 12 that had really bright flowers on, and I said I was going to fussy cut them and see if I could do something with them to make them more usable for myself. So I started off just by inking round the flowers to age them a little bit. And I used, where have they gone? I used the vintage photo and a little bit of tea dye. So that's what they look like when they've just been inked. Where's the other one there? So already I could see a difference. These are the inked ones. This is the one that's not been inked. So you might not be able to pick it up on camera because it is quite subtle, but it has made a difference. So even just putting a little bit of ink on, I prefer these better now. Then I started thinking of other ways I could make these flowers more interesting. And I started to put on an experiment with this stuff, which is the Vintage Photo Distress Glaze. You just put it on with like an embossing ink. Do it in a normal way, shake it over, knock it off, and then use your heat tool. And they've come out really interesting. So that's one of them I've done. That's another. Some of them, these have been inked first, some haven't. Here's another one. And then this is a pink one as well. This wasn't inked first, this has just got the glaze straight on top. You can see the original colour there. But you can see the difference adding that glaze makes. And these now I'm much more likely to use. I did do a few as well where I went round with black marker before I did the embossing. I'm not as keen on these ones, but again, I was experimenting. So I think what I'll do is carry on showing you how I got this effect on here. I'm going to use these ones, which have already been done, which have already been inked. And I'm just going to put, this is the Dovecraft embossing stamp. And all I did was go directly onto the flower like this. Trying to get all the bits. Then I used this and I just covered it really well. And I usually let mine sit just for a couple of seconds to make sure it's gripped to the ink. And then knock that colour off. Tip it back in there. Everything's a bit tilted because my mat is slightly gone misshapen with the heat. Once it cools down, it will go back to normal. And then I'm going to get a new piece of paper. I'm going to very carefully pick it back up just with the tip here so that I don't move, or I move as little as possible of that embossing glaze. I really need some of those tweezers, you know, the ones that you press down and they stay pressed. I'm just going to hold it there on that corner. And then on my heat gun, I'm going to use it on the lowest setting. I find if it's on the highest setting, it shifts the powder around and you don't get a very nice finish. So I'm going to heat this up now. I will take the volume off just for those, just in case anyone is a little bit sensitive to noise. So I'm going to do it now. So this is it embossed, and you should now be able to see the sheen on it. And I just think that looks so nice. I am so more likely to use it like this than I am like this. It's just more my style. I can see it being used on more things that I do. And yeah, I just really like it. So what you can do then, once you've done that, is if there are any areas that haven't quite caught the ink, you can go round again. So for example, I had quite a lot of areas here that didn't catch the ink, so I just re-stamped and did the whole process again, which then covered it up and just made it a little bit darker, and it gives it a nice dimension. I feel, rather than just being all one flat colour, it's quite nice to have these slightly darker areas. Now, one way of doing it, which is what I have done, is by getting the bits that you want to add more pigment to and pressing it into your ink, sorry. That's okay, but you tend to get quite harsh lines. You might be able to see there where I got one. So I thought, I wonder if using a tissue would help. Could I put my tissue in, dab it into there, dab it on there, would it transfer? And it does. So you can get a little bit of ink, pop some on there, and if I do this now, that should stick, and it has. So that's quite a good way of doing it, because it makes a kind of more blended effect rather than just having those harsh lines from the ink pad. So I'll show you what that looks like heated up. I'll just get rid of this. Okay, get my tweezers. Lowest setting again. And you can see there now how that's just filled it in, and because I've used a tissue, I don't get the harsh lines. And that's a really good way of maybe creating some depth and darkness along the edges and leaving the middle bit a little bit lighter. So I'm going to just carry on and just do some more areas in the same way. And I'm just going to dab around the edges to see what effect that gives. So there we go, we've got some nice dimension to that there now. We've got some darker along the edge. I've managed to fill this leaf in and I'm liking the look of that. So for this next one, instead of putting the ink to it, I'm going to use the tissue and see what effect I get that way. It might give me a lighter effect, I may not have as much ink covering the flower. So this is just an experiment. Let's see how it goes. Just going to let it sit for a few seconds to make sure it grips. Shake it off. Right, so I'm going to heat this again now, and I'll turn the volume down again. But that's given a kind of speckled effect. I'm not sure if I'm as keen as I am on this one, but I'm going to go back in again and see if I can darken some areas. So I'm going to go here. And I'm just going to concentrate on one area at a time. And I found that easier because sometimes when you pick up, whatever it is that you are embossing, you can shift this and it makes a gap. So if I just do one area at a time, that should minimise that happening. I have a throg in my throat this morning. Right, this is going on again. Okay, so that's looking nice. That's giving it a little bit more dimension. I'm going to repeat. I'm going to go around the edges. And I will fast forward it a little bit so you don't have to watch it all in real time. Okay, so this is how this one is looking, and I'm liking the look of that. A little bit of ink around there, I think it will look great. So I'm wondering if I should now have a go at this large one, and I think I will do it without inking first because it leaves the colour a little bit lighter and I think it shows up a bit better. I do feel as well that the pink is working slightly better than the blue, although I still like the blue. Now for this larger one, I've got this crackle stamp and I'm wondering whether to just experiment and try and do some stamping on it. So let's give it a go. Apologies if I am wobbling the table at this point. So let's just put some stamp on here. It's just like a texture stamp and I'm wondering if it would add some texture. And again, we'll just see what it looks like. It might not work. And if it doesn't, that's okay. So let's pour some of this over and see if it grips. Well, yeah, something's stuck. So shall we have a go and see what that looks like? So yeah, I don't like that. It looks very busy. It's not worked the way I kind of wanted it to work. So what I'm going to do is go over with the stamp and just do it, oops, just do it the way I have been doing it, and hopefully that will give the finish. I'm just going to do this side so that I can still hold it here. Hopefully that will give the finish that I am after. But you know, all these things, it's trial and error. We've got to try these things and just experiment with them, even if they go wrong, because we never know otherwise. So I'm going to let that sit a second. So this is quite interesting. You can see the crackle that I did initially coming through, and I think that gives it some really nice texture. So I'm going to do this side the same. Unfortunately, I've got a harsh line here, so I'm going to have to do my little tissue technique there. So I'll do that first. I'll try and get that blended in. And then put this on. Go over some bits again. Give it a bit of depth. Can you see here, and I've heard other people say this as well about the glazes, that it kind of lifts up, and when you, even if you think it's dried and turned to glaze, you can kind of feel a little bit of texture on the top where it's not, well, I'm not quite sure what causes it really, whether it doesn't stick or whether, you know, I'm not heating it right, but I've heard a few people say it. I know Barbara from 49 Dragonflies, she said a couple of times that she struggles with this glaze for the same reason. It kind of blows away and doesn't really do, you know, doesn't really activate the way she expects it to, and I've got to agree. That's how that ink pad's been ended up being covered. Right, so let's give this a heat. Okay, so I've blended this bit in, and next I might try going round with my ink pad around the edges and seeing if I can apply ink that way to darken up some of those corners. So I'm just going to do this little bit here and see if it works. Well, it's stuck, so it looks like something's on there. So we'll heat it and see what that looks like. That's worked well. I like that a lot. I don't know if you'll be able to pick it up in camera, but it has given a very subtle finish around the edge. I'm going to repeat that all the way around. Okay, so this is how this one is looking. So I'm really happy with those. Really like how they've turned out, and I am much more, as I said, much more likely now to use these in a project because they look like the colours that I use, and they are now in the style that I use. So thank you for joining me, everybody. I am about to start a little project using one of my flowers, but I'm going to leave that for the next video. So I will see you back here very soon. Until then, take care. Bye.